Hey there, I'm Brian Goulet of gouletpens.com, and today I want to show you the Omas Ogiva Alba. This is a very special pen, and I'm very honored to be doing a collaboration with Omas to have an exclusive release of this pen in the US. Now, I know it kind of seems out of the blue that it might be like this because we haven't done a lot with Omas in the past here at gouletpens.com, and we have a US exclusive on this model that is really kind of a significant pen. This has basically come from a relationship that we are looking to build with Omas because they visited us earlier in the summer in 2014, and I saw a really strong values alignment between Omas, their company, their history, their craftsmanship, and what we are building here at Goulet. So it kind of was built upon that, and this pen really kind of symbolized a lot of what they stand for, what we stand for, and it just really kind of seemed to work out that way. Omas is a company that's been around since 1925. They're coming up on their 90th anniversary, which is part of what this pen is meant to kind of honor. And I'll get all into that in a minute. But this model, the Ogiva, was the first model that they designed back in 1927. Armando Simoni was the man who started Omas. And Omas is an acronym that stands for Officina Meccanica Armando Simoni, which means the machine shop of Armando Simoni. So that's kind of a neat little piece of history there for you. So he's a craftsman at heart, an inventor, a creator, and I really resonate with that because that's how the Goulet Pen Company came to be. I was making my own pens and then got into retailing. So I very much resonate kind of with that history. So Omas is coming up on their 90th anniversary. They started in 1925 and 2015 is going to be their anniversary. So what's interesting about this pen is it's called the Alba, which in Italian means dawn. And so they're coming on the dawn of their 90th anniversary, which is why they wanted to do this. And to go with that kind of dawn theme, they chose 3 colors for this pen. They chose a purple, orange, and a green. And these colors are ones that they chose because it looks similar in their eyes to the colors of the Aurora Borealis at dawn. So that's what these colors are. So a lot of depth, a lot of thought has gone into these, and I believe they searched for about a year and a half to get these exact colors for this particular pen. Back in the early 1900s, before plastic was a readily available material, you had things like ebonites and celluloids, and that was the alternate material to things like wood and metal. Those were the cool modern things to use. But they were very time consuming, they were kind of hazardous to work with. And once plastics came along, they largely replaced these kind of materials, mainly because of convenience and cost effectiveness. And cotton resin is a unique material that Omas designed and they create exclusively in their shop in Bologna, Italy. And it's interesting because it's a material that I actually wasn't previously very familiar with until I started talking with them about this pen. It's made out of cotton resin, and cotton resin is a unique material that Omas designed and they create exclusively in their shop in Bologna, Italy. So why is cotton resin so special? And what makes it different than, say, a plastic pen? You know, it kind of looks like plastic, but it's not. Cotton resin is actually a natural material. It's made from the cell walls of the cotton blossom. And because it's a natural material, it takes a very long time to prepare until it's in a stable enough state where it can actually be shaped into a pen. So it takes a very long time, and it's a very unique process that Omas has developed themselves. If you're familiar with celluloid is a very similar process that's made from wood fibers. This one comes from cotton fibers. So Omas has a bit of a kind of romantic feel towards these vintage materials. And it has some unique benefits that plastic doesn't have. One of them would be that because it is a natural material, it has a little bit of life to it. I have kind of a woodworking background, so I really appreciate something that's made out of wood. Even though the tree was chopped down a long time ago, it still continues to absorb moisture and it kind of releases moisture and it moves and breathes, and it still is always kind of alive. And this cotton resin is very similar to that. And one neat aspect of that is when you're feeling the pen, it kind of has a warm touch to it. plastic is cold, and it's you know, you can heat it up, kind of hold the pen for a while and heat it up, but this pen just kind of feels naturally kind of warm, and it's a very subtle feel that's different than plastic, but it feels smoother in a way, and it has just, it's hard to explain, it just has a little bit of a different feel to it. And because it's that natural material, it's going to actually kind of absorb a little bit of the oils in your fingers. And what that, in terms of that, practically what that's going to mean, much like ebonite does, or celluloid, this cotton resin is going to give you a little bit of a firmer grip on this pen than you would have in a similar looking plastic. So if you're writing with a long period of time, it's not going to kind of slip around in your hand as much as plastic, which it means that you're not going to have to grip it as hard to keep it from slipping around. So it's not going to fatigue your hand quite as much. If you notice, if you have a pen, especially with like a slick metal grip section, it's going to feel really fatiguing after a while because your hand is going to cramp up from having to grip the pen. It can be that way with plastic. It's not quite as bad as metal, but materials like celluloids and cotton resins, ebonites, the reason that they are so loved by the you know, most fervent of writing enthusiasts is because if you write a lot, it's going to be more comfortable over time writing with a more natural material like this. So another benefits that are kind of neat with this resin is it's not going to show scratches like an acrylic, like a plastic would. Plastic is a very brittle material, so it is durable, but it's going to show some fine scratches just with normal handling, just from moving the pen around, putting it on your desk and things like that. You'll still get some fine scratches in this cotton resin, but just from kind of handling the pen and rubbing it with your fingers, it almost kind of self-polishes, so it stays looking new longer than plastic. It's very kind of a subtle difference, but it is something that is kind of a benefit for this more expensive material. In addition to that, because it's not as brittle as plastic, it's less likely to chip and crack and things like that as plastic. The packaging for all Omas pens is pretty impressive. I mean, when you're paying this much for a pen, you expect to have nice packaging, and this definitely delivers. It's got a nice outer sleeve with an embossed logo here. And this is a numbered limited edition pen. There's only 327 of each color worldwide that are going to be available, and that's across all nib sizes. So this one that I happen to grab here is number 36 out of 327 for this particular color. So you slide it out of the outer sleeve, and it has this really nice solid box that looks, it's fit very well together. It's got kind of this sparkly kind of finish to it. Very nice. And it's got this nice kind of sliding fit to it. It's really got a nice fit of the top to the box. And it has kind of this embossing here in the top. It says Italian creativity, history, craftsmanship, the pleasure of writing. And then the pen itself is in a pen sleeve that kind of rests, kind of blends in with the rest of the insert here. And then you can pull this little tab and reveal underneath. It has a card that's, you know, thanks you for choosing them, and they have a hand signature there, which is kind of neat. A lot of handwork goes on into these pens. It's really kind of impressive. And then it's got a nice little booklet that gives you a little bit of the history. There's Armando right there. And it's got, you know, several different languages, but it talks about the history, several different models of pens, and then it gives you some instructions about how to actually, you know, ink up and use and clean these pens. So it's a nice little booklet there, nice little presentation. Put that back on. And then the pen itself, it's got a pen sleeve. And you pull the pen out of the pen sleeve. It's wrapped in plastic. And it has a sticker over top of the opening here with a handwritten signature and a number on there, as well as designates the nib size. So I'm going to very carefully kind of open this, slide it out. The ink on my fingers is kind of old and dried. I often have inky fingers. So here it is. And some neat features about this particular pen. First off, the size of the pen. I really like how big this pen is. I really like the size of this pen. I personally have very large hands, and this pen is a little bit on the bigger side. It's kind of this torpedo or cigar shape, very comfortable shape. tapers to the ends here. And it's got this fluting here. So it has actually, it's kind of ribbed, I guess you could call it. So it feels, you know, kind of bumpy if you're going, you know, around the pen, but it's smooth going down it. And it's kind of subtle, but it's got this kind of textured feel to it. And then that feel kind of goes away at the tapers. It's got a clip, which is a pretty firm clip, and it has a little wheel on the end of the clip. So if you are putting this in your shirt pocket, the wheel actually helps to go over your material there on your shirts. There's really nice presentation here on the center band. It's got an Omas logo on the front, and it's got this kind of like a nice pattern that goes around it here. Armando Simoni was really inspired by Greek architecture, so you can see a lot of those elements kind of, you know, almost as like a Greek column here, and it has kind of this ornamentation around the center band. This is a numbered limited edition pen, so they're making 327 of each color, and that's it. And they have an engraving here on the underside of the grip of the pen that tells you which number you have. It's a piston filling pen and actually has a really good ink capacity. It's about 1.8 milliliters, which is really, really pretty good. And the fact that it's a piston allows you to get that much ink in there. The pens have a 14 or 18 karat nib. The 14 karat nibs are in their flexible nibs. The 18 karat is all of their non-flexible nibs. Now the 18 karat is rather springy, but it's not what they call that flexible. The flexible is going to be what actually gives you some line variation to it. Another neat feature about these Omas pens is they use ebonite feeds for all of their pens. They individually craft every single one of these feeds, and they heat set each one to the nib for the individual pen. So these things are not mass produced. And in fact, just about every component for this entire pen is created and assembled by hand. And for a lot of their pens, there's almost 100 different steps that are required for the manufacturer. So it's an incredible amount of care. So what's the benefit of using an ebonite feed? Well, ebonite is essentially made of a hard rubber, and it's a porous material, so it actually helps to assist in the capillary action and keep a consistent ink flow. It also allows to compensate for any minor imperfections that there might be on the underside of the nib. Because they're heat setting the feed to the underside of the nib, it ensures that it's going to have proper contact to ensure a consistent ink flow. Omas actually has a rather extensive selection of nibs available. We had basically 15 nibs to choose from in what we were going to offer in the US with this pen. And that was kind of overwhelming because it's an expensive pen. It's hard to make a choice with that many nib selections of what to offer, especially because a lot of them, things like an oblique broad and things like that, not a lot of people really know what they are. So we had to kind of narrow the selection a little bit. There are 5 nib sizes that we're going to offer at gouletpens.com regularly. It's going to be a 14 karat extra flexible, extra fine nib, an 18 karat non-flexible extra fine nib, an 18 karat fine nib, 18 karat medium nib, and then an 18 karat medium metallic. You're also going to be able to special order any of the other nibs that we're not stocking on our site at no additional charge. It'll just take a couple extra weeks for us to get the nib in on a particular pen that you want, but you'll be able to select from any of the nibs that Omas offers. So I'm sure you're very curious as to how this pen actually writes. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up my orange medium 18 karat nib Ogiva. And the ink that I've selected, of course, would be an Omas ink. It shows Omas Violet. They don't have an orange to match exactly to this pen, but that's okay. I chose the violet just because I thought it would be an interesting ink to use. So I'm just going to unscrew the ink. This is a piston filling pen, and because it's a demonstrator pen like this, the material is kind of translucent, you can see when the piston is going down, which makes it easy to know what you're doing. So you just unscrew it counterclockwise to get the piston all the way down, and then you submerge that down into the ink until it goes all the way up into the grip section of the pen. And then you just slowly twist it clockwise, and you'll see the ink filling into the pen. This is a high ink capacity pen, and even without priming it, it fills pretty well. So I've got my Ogiva here with an 18 karat medium nib inked up with Omas Violet. So I'm going to give it a little test drive. So the thing I'm noticing as I'm writing, it's a very smooth, very consistent feel on this nib. Definitely not scratchy at all. I know that Omas tests every single one of these nibs. They hand polish all of these. There's so much handwork that goes into this, so their consistency is just going to be impeccable. It does have just a little bit of feedback to it. Definitely not a scratchy feeling at all, but it really feels like I'm in control of this nib. I'm using it on rhodia paper, which the rhodia paper is relatively smooth. It has just a little bit of tooth to it, but this paper is usually smoother than what most people deal with. And some people find slicker papers like this with a really smooth gold nib. You can kind of lose a sense of control, especially if you're writing fast, if you're writing large. I do not feel that way with this nib. I feel like, you know, I can start and stop and kind of make very quick movements, and I'm not just going to like slip away and kind of lose my mind. Not lose my mind, but you know what I mean. You may have had situations like that before with previous nibs, but I really feel in control with this one. It's going to be a kind of a wet writing nib, you know, especially if I give it a little bit of pressure. I can get a little bit of line variation out of it. I wouldn't recommend doing that a lot, but it just goes to show you I'm not writing with an intense pressure here, but you can see I'm getting a darker line. I'm getting a little bit broader line, and that's just because the nib itself is very responsive. It is rather soft, so I'm able to do that without a great amount of effort. And what it's going to do for me, that 18 karat kind of softness to it, it's going to act kind of like a shock absorber. So if you think about, if you have a stainless steel nib, it's going to be very stiff, generally speaking. So you're going to feel, it's sort of like if you drove a car and you had no shocks, you would feel every bump on the road. Whereas if you have an 18 karat nib or any other type of gold nib, usually it's going to bend a little bit as you're writing with different kind of pressure. So it's just going to kind of smooth out the bumps in your writing, and it's going to feel, you know, a little smoother that way. And this is a European pen through and through. The way this nib is ground as I'm using it, it is definitely slightly on the broader side. So I think you could expect that for most of their nibs. If you're used to Japanese nibs and really, really fine nibs, I think you could expect that these nibs are going to be just a little bit broader. So as I'm writing with this pen, one thing that I'm noticing is my natural tendency is actually to have the cap off the pen, which is actually weird for me that I just naturally did that because I have very large hands, and normally I would post my pen because I would need to, because with most pens, it's too short to fit in there without being posted. But this pen is long enough where it doesn't need to do that. So that's kind of neat. And the pen is actually pretty light. It's only about 22 grams uninked. So whether you cap it or not, the balance of the pen is actually really good. Maybe if you have really small hands and if you hold it really close to the grip, or really close to the nib, then maybe you will feel a little bit back weighted. But honestly, it's such a light pen. It's barely over the weight of like a Lamy All-Star. I think that it would be pretty much comfortable for most people, posted or unposted, honestly, in terms of weight and balance. If you notice the threads on this pen, where it fits onto the cap, the threads are actually kind of right in the middle of the grip of the pen. And that could concern me just a little bit for some, because I know having threads where your fingers are can be kind of a pet peeve for some people. I've especially heard with certain other pens like Pelican that some people just are really bothered by the sharpness of those threads. I don't find that to be the case with this pen personally. Me, where I hold this pen, my thumb is sitting right on those threads, but I really don't even feel it. I feel a little bit of the step down where the threads stop, but I don't feel any discomfort or displeasure from having my thumb on those threads. Likewise, if I hold it a little further back, there is a bit of a step here where the grip section ends and the fluted part of the body begins, and I don't really find that to be bothersome either. It's a very gentle step, it's not very sharp, and I think that it will be a very pleasurable, very comfortable pen for most people. Well, I tried to be pretty thorough in this video covering the Alba, but if you have any other questions, you can feel free to leave something in the comments on the blog or on YouTube. I'd be more than happy to answer anything that I can. I'm very honored to be able to introduce the Ogiva Alba to you, and I'm thrilled to be able to do this collaboration with Omas. So thank you so much for spending time with me today and watching this video, and right on.